Have you ever looked at your life after 60 and felt like you were standing in a familiar room? Yet something feels unfamiliar inside you. Have you ever wondered why the older you get, the more you crave a sense of direction? Not toward success, but toward peace. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about that quiet feeling many people carry in later life. The feeling of being lost in aging. Not lost because you do not know where you live, but lost because the old maps stopped working. The map of identity that came from work. The map of worth that came from productivity. The map of belonging that came from being needed. The map of comfort that came from routines that no longer exist. After 60, life can change in ways that make you question who you are and what you are here for. And when the old answers fade, the mind can panic. Buddhist wisdom does not shame this panic. It recognizes it. It says, yes, the ground shifts. Yes, the body changes. Yes, roles fall away. Yes, the future becomes less predictable. And yes, this can feel disorienting. But Buddhism also says something quietly hopeful. Feeling lost can be the beginning of being found. Because when the old illusions break, you have a chance to return to what is real. So today we are going to walk through 10 lessons that can guide you home after 60. Not home as a place on a map, but home as a state of mind. Home as steadiness. Home as self-respect. Home as compassion. Home as wisdom. Home as a heart that can face impermanence without collapsing. And I will speak about these lessons as a lived journey. Through story, because the heart learns through life, not through slogan. Let me start with a scene that might feel too familiar. Imagine someone named David. He is 67. He retired a year ago. Everyone congratulated him. People said, "Now you can finally relax." But David did not feel relaxed. At first he enjoyed sleeping later. He enjoyed not rushing. Then something strange happened. The days began to blur. The phone rang less. The sense of purpose that used to be automatic began to fade. He did not say it out loud, but he began to feel invisible. He began to feel irrelevant. And at night, his mind started talking louder. What is the point now? What if my health declines? What if my partner leaves first? What if I become a burden? What if my best days are behind me? David tried to solve the feeling by staying busy. He filled his calendar with errands. He watched more content. He scrolled more. He argued with strangers online. He joined groups that did not really fit him. He kept moving because stillness felt like falling. But the more he moved, the more lost he felt, because his movement had no direction. It was just escape. One day he visited an older friend named Ken, a man in his late 70s. Ken lived simply. His home was not fancy, but it felt calm. David expected to find Ken bored. Instead, he found Ken grounded. Ken greeted him warmly, made tea slowly, and listened. David finally admitted, "I feel lost." Ken nodded like he understood completely. Then Ken said, "Being lost is not the problem. The problem is when you try to cure being lost by running from yourself. If you want to be found, you must return." "Return to what?" David asked. Ken answered, "Return to the present. Return to the breath. Return to compassion. Return to what you can actually practice today. That is how you come home." That conversation became the beginning of a different path for David. And it can be the beginning for you too. Lesson 1 is to stop treating the feeling of being lost as failure and start treating it as a signal. Many people panic when they feel lost because they think it means they did something wrong. They think they are weak. They think they should be grateful and cheerful. But in Buddhism, feelings are information. Feeling lost often means the old identity structures are dissolving. That dissolution can be painful, but it can also be sacred, because it creates space for a deeper identity that is not built on roles. In Buddhist terms, this is the moment when clinging becomes visible. You see what you have been using to define yourself. You see what you have been gripping. You see what you have been depending on for worth. When those things change, the mind feels lost. That is not proof you are broken. It is proof you are waking up to reality. David began practicing a simple shift. When the lost feeling arrived, he stopped immediately trying to erase it. He said quietly, "This feeling is telling me something. What am I clinging to? What am I afraid of losing? What am I trying to prove?" This question did not solve everything, but it opened a door. It turned panic into curiosity. And curiosity is the beginning of wisdom. Lesson 2 is to understand impermanence not as a threat, but as the basic instruction manual of life. After 60, impermanence becomes louder. Bodies change, friends pass away, family dynamics shift, society changes quickly. The mind can react with fear because it wants stability. Buddhism says stability in the outer world is limited. Real stability comes from a trained mind, a mind that can meet change without constant resistance. Impermanence means everything changes, but it also means no emotion stays forever. No fear stays forever. No sadness stays forever. Even confusion changes shape. When you understand this, you stop treating a difficult season as a permanent verdict. You stop saying, "I am lost and I will always be lost." Instead you say, "This is a season. I can practice through it." David started noticing impermanence in small ways. The warmth of tea rising and fading, sunlight shifting across the floor, his own moods changing during the day. When he saw small change clearly, big change felt less shocking. He began to accept that aging is not a personal insult. It is the nature of condition. Lesson 3 is to return to the breath because the breath lives where you actually are. When people feel lost, their minds often leave the present. They replay the past. They worry about the future. They compare themselves to others. They drift into stories. The breath brings you back. The breath is not philosophy. It is an anchor. Buddhism begins with breath because the present moment is the only place where practice can happen. If you want to come home, you must return to now. David began a simple morning practice. Before he checked anything, he took 3 slow breaths. He felt his shoulders soften. He felt his jaw relax. He did not demand peace. He simply returned. At night, when his mind raced, he returned again. 3 breaths, sometimes 10. The mind did not become perfect, but it became less tyrannical. He began learning that he could be with himself without running. Lesson 4 is to see thoughts as events, not command. Feeling lost often becomes worse because the mind produces convincing thoughts. You are too late. You wasted time. You are becoming irrelevant. Nobody cares. You will end up alone. These thoughts feel like truth because they arrive with emotional weight. Buddhism teaches mindfulness, the ability to watch thoughts without automatically believing them. The mind produces thoughts like a radio produces sound. You do not have to obey every broadcast. You can listen and let it pass. David learned a simple phrase: thinking is happening. When a frightening thought came, he labeled it fear thought, regret thought, comparison thought. Then he returned to breath. This created space. Inside that space, he could choose a different response. He could choose kindness instead of panic. He could choose action instead of rumination. He could choose rest instead of self-punishment. Lesson 5 is to loosen identity and discover the self that exists beneath roles. Many people feel lost after 60 because roles shift. Worker becomes retired. Caregiver changes shape. Provider changes. Social status changes. The mind asks, who am I now? Buddhism offers the teaching of not self, which does not mean you do not exist. It means the self you cling to is not fixed. It is a changing process. When you cling to a fixed identity, you suffer when it changes. When you loosen identity, you gain flexibility. David realized he had identified deeply with being competent, being productive, being needed. Without those roles, he felt empty. Kant suggested a question that felt strange at first. Who are you when you are not performing? David did not know. So he began exploring. He remembered he enjoyed walking slowly. He enjoyed reading quietly. He enjoyed listening to music without multitasking. He enjoyed helping people in small ways without being in charge. He began discovering a self that was not built on proving. That self felt quieter but more real. Lesson 6 is to practice compassion toward yourself, because harshness makes you more lost, not less. Many people respond to being lost with self-attack. They call themselves weak. They call themselves lazy. They call themselves ungrateful. They try to shame themselves into motivation. But Buddhism says you cannot hate yourself into peace. Compassion is not indulgence. Compassion is the courage to meet suffering with kindness. David noticed how cruel his inner voice could be. When he felt tired, it called him useless. When he felt lonely, it called him pathetic. When he felt anxious, it called him weak. He realized he was living with an inner bully. So he practiced a simple self-compassion gesture. When the lost feeling arrived, he placed a hand on his chest and said, "This is hard, and I am here." He did not force positivity. He offered presence. Over time, the inner voice softened. When the inner voice softened, the mind became less chaotic. And when the mind became less chaotic, he felt less lost. Lesson 7 is to simplify your inputs and your environment so your mind can hear itself clearly. In later life, the nervous system often becomes more sensitive to constant stimulation. Too much news, too much scrolling, too many arguments, too much noise. These things keep the mind agitated. An agitated mind cannot feel home. It feels scattered. Buddhist practice often includes simplicity, not as deprivation, but as clarity. You remove what feeds suffering so peace has room to grow. David made a change that seemed small but had a big effect. He stopped consuming heavy content at night. He reduced the amount of time he spent reading angry opinions. He spent more time in quiet. He took walks without headphones sometimes. At first he felt bored. Then he felt something else. He felt space. In that space, he began noticing what he actually felt, what he actually needed, what he actually valued. The mind began to settle. The lost feeling softened. Lesson 8 is to cultivate meaningful connection, not constant social performance. Many people fear loneliness after 60, and loneliness can be real. Friends pass away. Social circles shrink. Family becomes busy. But Buddhism reminds you that connection is not only quantity, it is quality. One sincere relationship can nourish you more than a room full of shallow interaction. David realized he had been trying to cure loneliness with noise. He attended events where he did not feel seen. He chatted but did not connect. He smiled but did not share truth. He felt more lonely afterward, so he chose a different approach. He reached out to one friend for a simple walk. He joined a small group where people practiced mindfulness and spoke honestly. He began volunteering a few hours a week, not as overwork, but as connection. When you serve, you remember you still matter. When you serve, you build karma of kindness, and kindness creates connection. Lesson 9 is to turn daily life into practice, so you stop searching for meaning somewhere else. A major reason people feel lost after 60 is that they believe meaning is something outside them. A title, an achievement, a big purpose. Buddhism offers a different view. Meaning is created by how you live each day, by the quality of your attention, by the kindness of your speech, by the integrity of your action, by the steadiness of your practice. David began turning ordinary moments into practice. Washing a dish became a moment of presence. Walking became a meditation. Talking with his partner became an opportunity to listen more and defend less. Feeling irritation became a chance to pause and breathe. This was not dramatic, but over time, his days felt more alive. When your days feel alive, you feel less lost. Lesson 10 is to make peace with mortality so you stop postponing the life you want to live. This is the deepest lesson, and the one most people avoid. After 60, the reality of mortality becomes clearer. Some people respond by panicking and trying to squeeze everything out of life. Others respond by shutting down. Buddhism offers another path. Use mortality as clarity, not as fear. Mortality reminds you that time is precious. It invites you to stop wasting it on trivial battles, on endless resentment, on proving, on comparison. David began a gentle reflection each morning. Life is uncertain. This body changes. Therefore, I will live today with kindness. He did not use this to scare himself. He used it to wake up. He started saying what mattered sooner. He apologized faster. He forgave more. He simplified. He spent time on what nourished him. He stopped postponing peace. Now let me weave these 10 lessons into one continuous story, because I want you to feel how they guide someone home. Not in theory, but in life. After months of practicing, David still had days when he felt lost. But those days changed shape. They were less frightening because he knew what to do. He returned to breath. He observed thoughts. He practiced compassion. He simplified input. He reached out to connection. He moved his body gently. He accepted impermanence. He remembered mortality. He practiced. One afternoon, he noticed something while sitting in his backyard. A small breeze moved through the trees. He heard distant traffic. He felt the warmth of sunlight on his face. And he realized he was not chasing anything in that moment. He was simply here. The lost feeling was gone. Not because life became perfect, but because he stopped abandoning the present. He remembered Ken's saying, "If you want to be found, you must return." David finally understood that home is not a place you arrive at after you fix everything. Home is the practice of returning to what is true, again and again, with kindness. That is what I want you to carry from this video. If you feel lost in aging, you are not broken. You are being invited. Invited to drop the old maps. Invited to stop proving. Invited to stop comparing. Invited to stop fighting impermanence. Invited to train the mind. Invited to make your later years not only about surviving, but about awakening. And awakening is not a dramatic event. It is the quiet ability to see clearly and live gently. Before we close, I want to speak to you directly for a moment. If you are feeling lost right now, start smaller than your mind thinks you need to. One breath, one walk, one kind sentence to yourself, one moment of reducing noise, one sincere conversation, one small act of service, 1 minute of letting a thought pass without following it. These are not small. They are the way you guide yourself home. Now, I want to ask you a question. When do you feel most lost? In the morning, in the afternoon, or at night? And what is one practice from today that you are willing to try in that exact moment? Share your thoughts in the comments if you want to. Your story might help someone else feel less alone in their own aging journey. If this video helped you, please support the channel by subscribing, liking, and commenting. It helps more people find this quiet wisdom when they need it most. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take one slow breath right now. Feel your body supported. Let the shoulders soften. Let the jaw relax. And remember, you are not behind. You are not finished. You are not lost forever. You can come home, breath by breath, moment by moment, through practice, compassion, and the quiet courage to meet life as it is. Until next time, be gentle, be steady, and keep returning to what matters.